Good morning. Sorry if I seem like the Jack in the Box today, but the Browns wanted a Sunday off, and I switched with Peggy Shin, so I'm here, and Bonnie said, "Hey, can you do both?" And I said, "I think I can, Sam, I am." So we'll see how it turns out. Who has not been here for the other Sundays for this month? Okay, I see a few hands. Okay. As Bonnie said, the theme we're covering this month is Spirit as Mother, Father, God. And we've been so blessed to have so many different speakers. I think one of the things I absolutely love about the Center for Spiritual Living is that you get an opportunity to hear from not just one person, although I could hear Bonnie talk every Sunday myself. So she's like, "No, I'm off next Sunday." It's just a great opportunity to hear different perspectives, and there's just no other place in Las Cruces you can do that. Maybe at the Unitarian Church once in a while, but we're just blessed. So we have a YouTube channel, so if you haven't gone to check that out, I recommend you check that out. It's Spiritual Pathways on YouTube. As Peggy said when she spoke, she used to buy the cassette tapes. Do you guys know what those are, cassette tapes? So I used to buy the cassette tapes and just listen to them over and over and over. I was just really trying to immerse myself in an understanding of science of mind, religious science, and they were so nourishing. I don't have a tape machine anymore, but they have the CDs in the bookstore, right? Okay, as you can listen, or you can also go to YouTube. So I love this. I love this topic. Although I have to admit, when I first heard from Bonnie, this was a topic, I thought, "Oh no!" And so I asked myself, "Where do I feel it in my body when I see Spirit as Mother, Father, God?" And Ram Dass, the author and spiritual teacher, he has this great quote, and it says, "If you think you're so enlightened, go spend a week with your family." Button, right? So. We know how that'll turn out. I mean, it'll turn out great. I'm just saying. Yeah. No, I don't talk about my family very much. I have a real public life. I have a public life as an entertainer, and then I have a personal life. So I really try to keep those separate. But in coming to speak to you, I have nothing but a sense of gratitude for my mother and for my father, and I don't know. I was born really strange, if you haven't noticed, and so my mother told me, "Randy, you were born an adult," and I said, "Your point is what?" In fact, my nickname growing up was Il Pensivo, which means the pensive one. So I was always away thinking. Other kids were out playing, with swords and stuff, and I was just inside thinking, I wonder why I'm here, When you have that existential question at 6 years old, it leads to an interesting life. So years ago, I wrote a letter to both my mother and father, and I said, "I want to forgive you for anything that you feel that you may have wronged us, but also wanted to thank you for the sacrifices that you made for all of us." And my dad called me and said, "What's that about?" And my mom said, "Thank you, I think." So it's all good. They both grew up really poor. They were both migrant workers. When they were little children, they were in the fields hoeing and picking cotton, chopping weeds. Neither one of them could speak English at all, not until their early teens, and they were punished for speaking their own language. And so they didn't teach us. Their first language was Spanish, and so unfortunately, we didn't learn Spanish as children, which is the best time to learn it. I took 4 semesters of it in college, and I can say I can fake it really, really well. Yo quiero enchiladas, I can say that and sound really credible. But anyway, so I'm nothing but grateful about that. So when we're talking about Spirit as Father, Mother, God, what are we talking about? Well, in the Western culture, we tend to, I think, to project onto it parental roles, and anything about parental roles usually involves reward or punishment. So I think in some ways, as long as we see that separation, as long as we see Spirit as either one of those, probably not going to have as integrated life as we certainly could have. So I've certainly chosen to see those both as gifts. Meister Eckhart, the German philosopher and mystic, spiritual leader, he says, separate yourself from all two-ness. Be one on one, one with one, and one from one. And the other quote I like about his is wonderful. It says, between God and me, there is no between. Does that resonate with anybody? Between God and me, there is no between. The Tao Te Ching, I'm sure some of you know about the Tao. It's spelled Tao, but pronounced Tao. One of my favorite early spiritual books or philosophical books was the Tao of Pooh. Has anybody read that? I recommend it to everybody. It's a nice, easy read. The Tao of Pooh, Pooh as in Winnie the Pooh. So, not the, anyway. So when Westerners translated the Tao, there's words in there that we assigned the masculine and the feminine identity to, but the actual characters in Chinese mean person or sacred one, and so there was no differentiation the way that we do it now. But I've read the Tao over and over, and the idea of the uncarved block, to me, the great unknown, the great mystery, as we Native Americans call it, resonates. So this is from the 28th stanza of the Tao, and it says, know the masculine, but keep to the feminine. Receive the world in your arms. Be a valley under heaven. If you do, the Tao will never leave you, and you will become as a little child. That really connects with the theme of this month. It also says, know the personal, yet keep the impersonal. Accept the world as it is. And if you embrace the world with compassion, then you will live a life of abundant virtue. So what that's saying is, be the qualities of water, the receptiveness. And it also goes in to say that, water, that one drop of water can, over time, make an entire, the Grand Canyon. Just look at the Grand Canyon. That's the Colorado River made that, and some wind going through it. Those receptive qualities that we normally assign to the, feminine qualities. So we're talking about spirit as mother, father, God. So I'm going to go back real quick and ask you, what is spirit? So because we pretty much know what the mother aspect is, the father aspect is, just happen to be left and right. But let's talk about what spirit is. So this is from Ernest Holmes, and in case some of you don't know, Ernest Holmes is the founder of religious science, which is what it's taught here in all of its wonderful qualities. This is what he says about spirit. He says, we treat spirit as the active and the only self-conscious principle. We define spirit as the first cause of God, the absolute essence of all that is. It is also called the great or the universal I am. When Moses asked God who he should tell the children of Israel has sent him, the answer was, thus shalt say, I am hath sent me unto you. The reason why I am is given is because it's an absolute statement. Spirit is consciousness in mind, and it is the power which knows itself. It is conscious of its own being. Now, that's an important part. It is conscious of its own being. The Spirit is self-propelling. It is absolute and all. It is self-existent and has all life within it. It is the world and the world in its volition. It has choice. It is volition. He goes on to talk about it. And then he says, Spirit is the Father, Mother, God because it is the principle of unity back of all things. The masculine and the feminine principles both come from the one Spirit, all life, truth, love, being, cause, effect, and is the only power in the universe that knows itself. That's a pretty important point there. The only power in the universe that knows itself. Oh, first I want to say, I forgot to tell you that I'm a little more gussied up than usual because I have a wedding after this. Gonna go sing some country music at a wedding, and wish me luck. You know, this would have been the perfect day for Doug to introduce me as Randy Travis, but love you, Doug. So with Native American culture, somebody asked me about this past week, and asked, did Native Americans see, you know, the masculine and the feminine as much as we do as Westerners? And while I'm not a scholar, I have studied quite a bit of my own Native American ancestry. I kind of came to it later in life when I began to explore it. When we were growing up, we were told that that our Native American part should be kept really quiet, because at the time that my parents moved to the hometown where I grew up in, there were signs that said no Mexicans, no dogs allowed, you know, in the building, don't apply for a job. This stuff really happens, and it's important to understand that, because to see how far we've come and how far that we're still going. So our parents told us, you know, don't ever tell anyone that you're Indian too, because that's even worse than being Mexican. So we were taught to have this kind of self-loathing about aspects of ourselves. And I also think that we can sometimes have some self-loathing about maybe aspects that we see as too feminine, maybe aspects we see as too masculine within ourselves and what we project onto others. So my grandparents, I didn't know them all that well. My grandpa Joe on my dad's side, he only spoke Spanish, and I didn't speak Spanish. My grandmother on my mother's side, she spoke her native Indian language, and she spoke Spanish. And so my mother would drop us off, and my dad would drop us off with him, and they would just talk. So what I was trying to learn from them is how they interacted with the world. And what I learned from my grandpa Joe were the qualities of being. He walked around with a sense of grace, sense of knowingness, sense of everything's going to be all right. And he drove this great old green Chevy pickup truck with the giant wheel rims. They were great. But he taught me how to make chilaquiles. So he taught me how to cook. I don't know how, he would say, in Spanish. And so he would tell me and put it in there. And my grandmother didn't have any teeth, and so we would have to peel grapes for her and give them to her. So those little things, anytime anyone came over to her house, she would get out the crackers and jelly. You know, that's all she had. But every time, so that sense of hospitality is what I learned from both those aspects. But in Native American cultures, what typically runs through many of the tribes, and there were over 500 tribes by the time that Columbus discovered us. So there were over 500 tribes, and they each had their own religion, their own spirituality, their own way of practicing. But pretty much through it all was this concept of Father Sky, Mother Earth. And there was a lot of talk about Creator. So it's like you have this Creator, you had this person, it's not even a person, they wouldn't call it a father or a mother usually. They would say Creator. And there's one tribe that would refer to Creator as the one who thinks things into being. You know, isn't that cool? The one who thinks things into being. So you would have those aspects of, you would have Father Sky, you'd have Mother Earth, and there's so many creation stories, and I was going to share them with you, but they're all so violent that I just decided otherwise. It usually involves some entity eating up the world and spitting them out, and children and, blood, gore. But the cool thing is that there were stories about Father Sky and Mother Earth squabbling, and from that squabble came mist, or came rain, or came certain types of lakes and land. So there was a reason to explain everything, but it was rarely in a sense of, you're going to provide for me, you're going to take care of me. Creator was the one who was taking care of everything. Or beyond Creator, there was the Great Spirit, which many talk about. But my favorite term, my favorite way to describe spirit is called the Great Mystery. And by saying the Great Mystery, it was like, well, we have no idea what it actually is. We have no idea what that power is. It's just a great mystery, and we're going to accept it as the Great Mystery. So being uncomfortable with that inability to define it, I tend to really like. But I'm sure you've all heard about Spider Woman or Grandmother Spider. Grandmother Spider is a theme that runs through many, many different tribes. And I like to say that Grandmother Spider was the original string theory, that they're trying to look at in quantum mechanics now. So the Hopi have a story about, in the beginning, only two beings were in existence. There was Creator, the one that thinks things into being, and then there was Tawa, the sun god. He had the powers of all that was above, and Spider Woman, or the earth goddess, and she had the powers to create things. And so the sun god, this is cool, he would imagine things into being, and Spider Woman would make them. She would say, "Oh, okay, I kind of know what you're talking about." So she would take all the different colors of the flowers, and she would create humans, and she'd create people, she'd create plants. But through all of it, she attached the thread of her spider silk to each person to provide access to her wisdom and her protection. Isn't that cool? So there's like that silver cord that we sometimes talk about. And she would teach them the song of Creator. And this one, she taught, she said, "I'm going to teach you how to resonate a certain sound. And when you make this sound on the earth, it'll make things into being." So she stationed these two creatures that she made on each pole, that way before the people knew there was a north and south pole. And Spider Woman told them, "You have 7 energy areas in your body." That was way before we even knew about chakras. And so there's just this beautiful being taught by the sky, by Father Sky, then also being created and being sustained and being nurtured and taught how to sing, how to pray, how to live by Grandmother Spider. So there's always that sort of balance in there, which I really like. Just a little bit about the gender thing. In Native American cultures, there's something called two-spirited people. Anybody heard about that, two-spirited people? It's not as popular now, but during the 70s, when gay and lesbian Native Americans were trying to claim that their identity, they talked about having two spirits. But the original term was Berdache. So if you know about the Berdache, any of you heard about that? Berdache were the children who were born into, like, say, the body of a male, for example, but exhibited the gifts of a woman. And so the parents would notice this at an early age, and they would say, this child seems to be more like a mother than a father. So they would do certain ceremonies to try to find out. One of them was, one I thought was kind of neat, was they would make a big circle. And if the boy walked into the circle, well, that was a sign he's probably going to be more of the feminine qualities. If he stayed outside of the circle, that meant he was, I forgot the word that they used, but it was something like too stalwart, too proud probably to go into the circle. And so the boy would be in the circle, and then they would be dancing, and they watched how he danced. So I guess if he danced a certain way, he's going to be more towards the feminine aspect of his being. So then there would be a singer out in the background singing a certain song, and the song they knew went straight to the heart. So if the boy started dancing to that song, then they would say, okay, he is a Berdache, which meant that he would take on the roles of the women in that particular tribe, whether they be bead making, tanning hides, maybe gathering food. But this Berdache was seen as a spiritual person, seen as somebody who has that connection between spirit and physical, somebody who communicated with the animals, somebody who was inspired by the arts. And of course, in Native American cultures, everybody was valued. The community is more important than the individual always, because you had to. Maybe if there were 100 people within your tribes, everybody had to have a certain role. Everybody had to contribute in some way. It was just that was understood. So this this crow, medicine man said, this is a quote from the early 1800s, and he said, we don't waste people the way white society does. Every person has their gift. Ever since the world began, there have been Berdash, and from the beginning of the world, it was meant that there should be shamans too. They were intended for that purpose. In other words, very much recognizing the gifts of that person. So instead of displacing that person, I guess in the way that our society certainly has, and it's certainly getting better, which I'm extremely grateful about, they would say, okay, this person has the gifts. This person has both the feminine and the masculine within, say, a masculine body. So let's use both of those. Let's take advantage of those. They were allowed to adopt children. They were allowed to raise children. So there was not as many hang-ups, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. The Mojave people, in their creation story, they actually talk about there was a time when people were not sexually differentiated. It's a big word. And it says that the translation of Berdash in their language meant instructed by the moon. Now that's kind of interesting, isn't it? But as Bonnie said when she spoke earlier this month, she was quoting Emma Curtis Hopkins, and she said, "Love, the divine principle, is the mother and the father of the universe, including us all. Father and mother are synonymous." So maybe what we're talking about when we're talking about seeing Spirit as Mother, Father, God, maybe it's unconditional love that we're really talking about. Maybe it's that unconditional acceptance of ourselves as this and as that, as masculine, as feminine, as cranky, as, there's this T-shirt that one of my friends wants me to buy her. I teach a meditation group at my house every week, and she says, "Randy, you have to buy me this T-shirt." The T-shirt says, "I meditate, I do yoga, and still on some days I just want to slap people." And I'm thinking, oh, God. Oh no! Breathe. You need a breathe timeout. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says, "The ultimate lesson all of us have to learn is unconditional love, which includes not only love for ourselves, but for others as well." Ernest Holmes says, "Spirit is all life, truth, love, being, cause, and effect, and is the only power in the universe that knows itself." And that's really important to think about when we do, when we're talking about Spirit as Mother, Father, God. The acceptance of ourselves, what's funny about parents is that we expect unconditional love from them totally, right? And we spend the rest of our lives testing that idea, testing that. So when I need to hurry up here, but when my late partner was going through the throes of pancreatic cancer, I really learned what unconditional love is. Unconditional love being not the "you make me happy, so I'm going to like you as long as you make me happy" kind of love, but it was that unconditional love that that I think all of us really want to feel, but it takes a lot of work. It turns out. I noticed how easily I could navigate between the qualities of being on the phone with the insurance company and chewing someone out, or going into the doctors and saying this did not happen, and you had to be tough to be a caregiver. Really have to be tough, and then just as easily could hold the hand in the middle of the night, when someone's screaming from pain, find a way to comfort. It just emanates from you. It emanates, and it's already there. It's already there, ready to be used, ready to be accessed at any given time. Throughout the day, we're going to have the yin and the yang. All of us do. And the more we see those as gifts, the more we accept them as part of ourselves, and being able to draw on them, the more integrated that we're probably going to be. So, quick ways to do that is begin to honor those aspects of yourself that you don't like in others. It's a projection about ourselves that we don't like in others. What sometimes in archetypes is referred to our shadow self. of those archetypes. You know, every archetype has its positive qualities, but they have that, you know, shadow side. So when we notice that in someone else, well, it probably has something to do that needs healing within our own selves. Value and honor when you might be feeling more masculine tendencies, qualities. Honor when you might be feeling more of the feminine. Both of those are divine gifts. You know, we're a new species. We're a new species. Our ancestors, Homo erectus, has been around probably 1.2 to 2 million years before Homo sapiens. We've only been cultivating crops for 20,000 years. You know, we gathered together to cultivate crops, to share meals, and all of a sudden we began telling stories about ourselves. And then we said, where did we come from? Well, we came from this, we came from that, we came from this, and we came from that. We developed religion, beliefs, and eventually spirituality. So we need to be a little easy on ourselves and know that we're an evolving species. Even our souls are evolving at the same time that we are. They're evolving through us, which is just a huge, huge gift. So be aware of those things. And to close, I'm going to close with a beautiful quote by one of my favorite authors is Pema Chodron. Pema Chodron, I guess. She is a Buddhist nun, an author, wonderful teacher. This is what she says. She says, the difference between theism and non-theism is not whether one does or does not believe in God. Theism is a deep-seated conviction that there's some hand to hold. If we just do the right things, someone will appreciate us and take care of us. Non-theism is relaxing with the ambiguity and uncertainty of the present moment without reaching for anything to protect ourselves. So this week, honor yourselves. And happy Mother's Day and happy Memorial Day. So it is.